special edition of Wednesday in the Word. Tonight is going to be so awesome. It is going to be so good. We're going to have an awesome and great conversation tonight. And so we want to give you some time to jump on. And please do me a favor for those who are jumping on. Please share this. Tonight, I really need you to share this. We're going to be having a powerful conversation in a town hall setting, if you will, about the state of being black in America. It's going to be so good. The state of being a black man in America. And I got some wonderful men here today, and we're going to have a great conversation on tonight. And so I want to give you some time to jump on as you're coming on. You know how we do. We just speak to one another, check on your brother, check on your sister, make sure they're doing good. And please share, mash your share button right now, or text somebody and let them know. Go to Faith Movers Church Facebook page. There's a conversation tonight that you need to hear, and it's going to be great. So we want to welcome everybody once again. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for logging on tonight to Wednesday in the Word. It's going to be a powerful night. So we're going to get rolling tonight, and I want to begin, if you will, by kind of just letting you know why we're doing this and why we're having this conversation. Unless you've been living under a rock, everyone in America, everybody in the world knows about the unfortunate death of our deceased brother, George Floyd, in Minneapolis, who was murdered, if you will, by 4 police officers. And since then, our society, our country, our city, our neighborhoods have been in complete disarray. Protests are going on, peaceful protests, some are, and rioting has been going on in certain states and certain cities, and it's just a whole lot of unrest going on in our society today, not only as it relates to racism and being black in America, but more particularly being a black man in America. George Floyd, who was killed, died not because he did anything wrong, not because he was resisting arrest or anything like that. He did everything that he was told to do, that you're taught to do, and still lost his life. And so as black men, if we're not safe by doing the right thing, how are we going to ever make it? And so we want to talk about these things and some other things tonight, and not only just talk about the problems, but prayerfully tonight we'll be able to give some solutions. And so please, ma'am, please, sir, share this conversation tonight. It's going to be real powerful. I want to get started, if you will, by just kind of having a moment of silence for George Floyd and his life and the memory and how he has, even in death, touched so many lives. And so even at home, I want you to let's take a couple of seconds and just bow our heads and let's just remember Mr. George Floyd. Amen. All right, so come on, let's get this party started tonight. I'm looking forward to this great conversation. I want to introduce our panelists today who are going to be engaging in this conversation. First of all, we have our very own Minister Ryan Thomas. He is the youth pastor here at Faith Movers Church, a young man who has a wife, a beautiful son, Abel, and just a wonderful family man and a man of God. And he's going to be engaging us in this conversation tonight, speaking as a young adult who's a black man in America, a family man, and so looking forward to hearing his perspective and hearing from him. And then we have Deacon George McClendon, who I must say is a celebrity. Now, if you don't know who Deacon McClendon is, he was recently featured on the famous documentary of the Chicago Bulls and that guy named Michael Jeffrey Jordan. He was interviewed in the documentary, and I'm telling you, man, that night when they showed your face, my phone was blowing up. They were saying, our deacon is on TV, he's on TV, and it was awesome to see him, and he's with us tonight. He's going to give us a great perspective about our conversation about being a black man in America is going to be awesome. And also we have another minister here at our church, great man of God who is an educator, dean of students here in our city in Perry State. And he's with us now, former law enforcement. And he's going to give a great perspective. We're so happy to have Minister Felix Simpkins with us today. And we're grateful for him. And then today we have powerful and awesome young man who's a part of our church. He's a police officer, Officer Ronell Harris. He's a police officer there in Country Club Hills, and he does security here at our church, at Faith Movers Church, and so he's a part of the Faith Movers Nation, and he's going to be giving a great perspective tonight. It is going to be awesome, and so I want to welcome all of our guests to this town hall tonight. We're looking forward to hearing from each of you and hearing your perspective. Ryan, let's start with you. You are a young black man who lives in America, man of God, family man, and I'm sure, like many of us, you was impacted when you witnessed and saw the video of the killing of George Floyd. I would like to hear from you. How did that affect you, seeing that killing, seeing that videotape of the officer who had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck? Not 1 minute, not 2 minutes, not 3 minutes, not 4 minutes, not 5 minutes, not 6 minutes, not 7 minutes, but 8 minutes and 42 seconds. The officer had his knee on his neck that literally we know now that took his life. What were some of the emotions that you went through as you watched that as a young black male in America?
Well, Pastor, I'm like you, we work with people. And oftentimes when you're working with people, you kind of put yourself in the back. But I had to actively think about what happened. And we've seen too many of these killings. Police brutality is a reality for all of us. But I really had to pause. I actively told myself, you know what? I'm going to really sit and allow this to digest, because when I first saw it, I looked at it and then I went on with my day as another video, because it's something that we see all the time. But I told myself, I'm going to give myself this time to really allow it to impact me. Not knowing that this incident, this murder was the one that was going to really set the world on fire and put everybody on notice that the time is up. After I finished watching it, I was just reminded of everything that my mother would tell me. He was screaming out for his mother, and just, I am my mother's child. And I know you talk about it a lot, like being a mother's boy, and just hearing him scream out for her. I was just reminded of all the lessons that she told me. We would have late night conversations all the time about a lot of different things, but it was always so personal, and just thinking about my relationship with my mother and just all the people that we carry. It's a lot of people that we carry just as men in general, being a husband, being a father. I carry that weight and that responsibility. And just seeing that, it immediately, the next thing I thought about was how often times it happens that we get desensitized, but really looking at it from the standpoint that we're resilient. This wasn't the first time it's happened. It's not new to us. For many circles, I know we all have friends that don't look like us, run into individuals that don't look like us. It seemed like it was new news to them, but it wasn't to us. And after going through that process of allowing myself to feel, I think it was the first time I had that realization that those same late night conversations that I got from my mother, I'm going to have to give to my son. And it definitely put a new lens on it, a new perspective on it, that, man, of course I'm a father. My son's 3, and you know it, but, fatherhood comes in waves. I know you all be able to speak to that, ages and stages, but I think that a part of my innocence of being a father, it kind of died. That I'm gonna have to have this conversation with my son, probably a lot sooner than I thought. I knew eventually it would have to happen because he looks like me.
Tamir Rice was so young, and youth did not help him. Yeah.
And I work with young people.
Yeah,
so I'm getting text messages from the youth council. I'm getting text messages from our young people here at Faith Movers Church. And honestly, they gave me so much strength.
I was about to say, how is their response being the youth at the church? How have they responded to this?
I mean, just great. I mean, everything that, that was wrong with the case, things they started picking up on in society. Like, did you see how this person respond? Did you see how that person respond? Why haven't this person said anything? And it just a lot of things they picked up on, and it let me know that even though I'm not too far away from them in age, it's like, man, when I was their age, I wasn't thinking like that. When I was their age, I wasn't able to spot out, that's racist. That silence is indifference, and that indifference is just as worse as someone just blatantly telling you exactly how they feel about your blackness.
Yes.
And it was honestly, they don't know, and I'm pretty sure as they're watching it, they'll be surprised, but they definitely, helped me out in such a way to give me perspective to know that, man, this generation gets it. They get it. They understand. They not unaware. And oftentimes when I talk to them, it just seems like sometimes you never know what it is. You plant seeds. I know that's my job is to plant a seed and pour a little water. It's for God to get the increase. But I just feel like the harvest is ripe. It's already there. It's already there. They already have a full knowledge of what's going on, and they were speaking out in a way that I know that I was pleased, and I know that God will be pleased, and I was able to share with them in that time because it impacted us all, but it opened a door. And you know how Paul says you want to be opportunistic with the gospel, and I wanted to share a little bit more about God's character, and it's our job to seek justice, love mercy.
That's right.
And walk humbly with our God, and able to have that conversation with him that God cares about justice, just as much as you do. This is not something that's devoid of God. God is in this with you, and exactly how you're feeling, exactly what you're seeing, you're noticing, that's important because God is seeing that. God is seeing that, and God is a just God, and God desires for us to take upon that same countenance and to find out a way to get justice.
That's so good. That's a good word. God is with us. He has not forsaken us in times like these. And I think that's such an important word for somebody to grab hold to, because in times like these, sometimes you can feel so helpless and so hopeless. But it's good news to know that God is with us, and he is a God of justice. It was amazing, Ryan, as you was talking about the impact that this whole situation has had on our young people. You can see that even as a millennial, oftentimes, we saw the videos of the people in the 60s, and we saw how they was marching and how they were attacked. And oftentimes we would say, man, if I had that chance to be a part of that, if I had an opportunity to be able to speak up against racial injustices, we would. And I think for a lot of young people, this is their opportunity. This is their chance to do something to make a difference. And so it's interesting because you talked about the impact this has had on the younger generation. But Deacon McClendon, I'm so interested to hear your perspective, because God has blessed you to be able to live on this earth many years. And I know through conversation that different conversations that you and I have had, we have talked about not only did you live through some of the racial injustices that were going on in the 60s, but you actively participated in that. You were a protester. You was one who marched. You had things happen to you as you were going through that process. And I'm sure when you was doing it in the 60s, perhaps you could not imagine that in the year 2020, we'll still be marching and protesting about some of these racial injustices that are going on in the country we live in, America. I would love for you to talk to us about what you experienced back then and what you see going on now, and kind of juxtapose those two or compare those two together about the differences and the different ways that they made you feel at those different times.
First of all, I want to thank you, Pastor, for allowing me to be a part of this. And being the OG here.
OG!
I can talk
His
a little.
new name is OG now. His new name is OG.
I could talk a little bit about what I went through, say, in 1959, where racism was the flavor of the day. We didn't expect a lot, but we had the same feelings that we had to do something to change the way things were. We were still riding on the back of the bus. We were still not eating at the counters in the stores. You had to go in the back door to get your food. I worked in a company at E.I. DuPont where you had separate dining rooms for the blacks and the whites. My father was a janitor. They couldn't use the bathrooms that he was cleaning up.
Wow.
And got suspended because they caught him one time using one.
Wow.
So I was 16, 17 years old at the time, not afraid of anything. However, my father was a family man, and he taught us not to be afraid of anything, to be honest, faithful. God created everybody. You shouldn't hate nobody. And we really grew up not hating anyone, not even the people that was against us. We didn't hate them, but we was always trying to change them, to make them see us in a different light. In 1959, we decided from my high school, at Howard High School there in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to do a sit-in at the F.W. Woolworth store. Word got out that we was going to do that, so they released all of the white schools in the city, and they would wind up downtown. When we got there on our buses, they had to move people out of the way to let us get in. We went in the front door, sit down at the counters, and they refused to serve us, and we refused to move. Right. So there was some pushing and shoving. The fight started. We tried to get out the back door. They had the back doors locked where we couldn't get out, and all of the white folks came through the front door, right? So we dealt with those kinds of things. We understood that we had to do what we did, and we had no fear of doing that. I was jailed for marching. I was jailed for the F.W. Woolworth thing. We had the fire department turn the hoses on us. So I experienced a lot of things now. Then, today, what has happened is the people that hated us then are now the police officers here today. Wow. So they got out of their sheets and put on uniforms. Wow. And the racism still exists as much as actually more today than it did back then. I mean, you didn't really know who was a racist. They did their stuff kind of undercover. And we even had, going through all that, we even had white friends in Chattanooga, Tennessee, if you could believe that. Wow. Right? So everybody wasn't like that, and what my father taught us was that everybody ain't like that. Some people are, some people not. You have to decide, who you can trust and who you can't trust. Wow. And we were nonviolent in the daytime, but at night we were warriors.
So you can understand
yes.
what is happening now.
I can understand that, yes.
How in the daytime, there's a time where it's peaceful protest, but then it can get kind of rowdy sometimes.
Rowdy, but still fighting for the cause, not breaking down stores and stealing stuff. We never did anything like that.
Yeah.
You never seen any protests that we did where we went in and kicked down a store and stole things. That didn't happen. We stayed true to what we was fighting for.
That's good. That's good. And it's so sad that, You're talking about 1959,
Right.
having to go through all of that, and now we're living in the year 2020. And I know it must be hard for you to still have to come to the realization we're still fighting some of these same issues, and it's so disheartening.
But you know, we kind of got away from some of the fights that we did, that Martin Luther King did, that some of the people that fought for what we believed in, and we started taking on a lot of the things that we hated in other people.
Yeah.
Right. So right now what we're doing is seeing the results of that. They still haven't changed, and however, I truly believe that we can still make the change.
Yeah.
But we have to change. We have to change internally ourselves. We have to be more in tune to do what we do here at our church, with our men's ministry. Men have got to stand up and fight. And when I say fight, I mean fight for the cause.
Yes.
Right? We have to stand up and fight for the cause. When you believe in something, you just can't say maybe, because maybe leaves rooms for failure.
Yes.
You just got to go for it, right? And you do what you have to do to make sure that your point is well taken.
I love that. We got to fight for the cause. That's a word.
We have to fight for the cause. We have to teach our young people, because they're the ones that's going to be the leaders coming up, right?
That's right. That's right.
And we got to make sure that they're fighting and they're keeping their minds focused on what they're fighting for.
That's right.
Not each other.
That's right.
When you're fighting, and you're really not fighting other people, you're fighting a cause.
That's right.
You're trying to make a change for the benefit of everyone, not just us.
I love that. Stay focused.
Stay focused
on the
what you're
cause.
doing.
I love that. I love that. He said, when you fight, you can't fight with no maybes. Maybe leaves room for failure. Come on, we can't do no failure. We got to fight for the cause. Come on, somebody just type that. I'm fighting for the cause. We're going to keep on fighting for the cause. We're not going to get weary in well-doing. The Bible teaches us in due season we will reap if we faint not. I love that. Minister Simpkins, let's talk a little bit about some of your experience and some of your background. Now, as I said earlier, you're a very unique experience and perspective with working as an educator now, dealing with young people, dealing with young adults. But before that, you had many years in law enforcement, working as a state trooper and having a lot of experience in that. If you can, kind of share with us perhaps the mindset or the behind the scenes of what law enforcement has to go through. Because sometimes we don't want to make it seem and just paint a broad brush that all police officers are crooked, all police officers are mean-hearted. As I said, I know great police officers. We have police officers who work at the church, take care of the church, take care of my family, do an awesome job in doing all of that. But at some way, somehow, what we're seeing recently is a disconnect between, it seems like the bad ones are making more noise than the good ones. And so kind of take us behind the scenes of the law enforcement world and how that impacts how they interact with society.
From my perspective is that when you go into an academy, you look at the point where they're training you how to engage, how to greet, meet, and how to de-escalate situations. One of the issues that we found, even though as I went into the academy, there was still some issues of the type of number of African-American troopers that they would hire. There was a lawsuit to get the number of troopers hired. And at the point where we were all able to come into the department, there was some still institutional racism within the department, but as we transitioned, it began to fade, but it didn't completely fade. But what you found out that there were people within the department who had the similar concerns, similar desires to see change. So as you stated earlier, embedded in law enforcement, unfortunately, I like how Deacon McClendon said it, now there are some people who change their sheets for uniforms. But The problem is there are some guys in uniforms who are still heroes, and they're white, black, Asian, and everything else. So not every officer is a bad officer. Yes. Not every white officer is a bad officer. I've gone undercover work with white officers. My life has been saved by white officers as I've saved their lives. We've interacted in the state police, local police departments, on task force, which Ron could speak to later. We've interacted, but you still have, as without getting overly biblical here, is that a little leaven leavens the whole loaf.
That's so true.
The problem with law enforcement is that, as Deacon McClendon said, we can make the change as a society, as a people, because there's some changes that we need to make as a people in a sense of community, but law enforcement has to change. But in order to change law enforcement, and I'll be interested to hear what Ron says about it too, is that law enforcement has to change itself. Because embedded in law enforcement are some bad elements. The badge, there was a little joke we used to tell in the academy. You could tell who the gun made and who made the gun.
Oh, say that again for us.
You could tell who the gun made and who made the gun.
Wow, wow.
Some people, their gun, well, I can't say that here, but their gun was their manhood. When other people, the gun was just a tool, it's an instrument. It's not your first resource. I used to tell the young guys interacting with, I was undercover or in the high schools working with them. Even at Prairie State, I did a little bit of law enforcement at Prairie State and working with some of the guys at the college, some real good officers at the college, engaging some of the young people, hostile, mad. And what we used to tell them, listen, you don't need to go here, not here. You're here to be educated. And even in the streets, you just tell the guys, I don't want to engage you in that way. I want to engage you in another way, because 9 times out of 10, at least when I was coming up, most black officers would knock you out before they pull a gun on you. Yeah. They lay hands on you before they pull a gun on you.
And that's so important, because sometimes I'm sitting there wondering, why not just fight it out? I mean, why you got to go to the gun so quickly and, shoot? What's wrong with just fighting it out?
Because the question is, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, and my wife and I, she'll tell you, we talk about this all the time, is that what we're looking for is what I consider reasonable expectations. It's a standard that's used. It's a Supreme Court standard of reasonable expectations. It should be reasonable that when you go to Frankfurt or you go to New Lenox or Naperville, when you greet the police, he knocks on your door, he greets you with respect. He engages you with respect, as opposed to when you come to the hood, it's not reasonable expectations, it's aggression. It's an overseer mentality. So we need, in order for that to change, law enforcement has to understand that community policing in affluent neighborhoods need to be consistent in poor neighborhoods. Not an enforcement model in the poor neighborhood, but a community policing model in all the neighborhoods. And law enforcement has to make that decision. They teach us and they train us with discretion. Yeah. We have discretion. It gets bad because it hurts. I mean, I'm on a seesaw, Pastor, because sometimes I can see murderers, if they're white, taken into custody. Taken into custody.
Right.
Whereas you take a black male who may have committed the same crime, he's slammed to the ground, back, hooked. I mean, he's hooked and crooked, even if he just volunteered to give himself up. So we have to be willing to talk about with white officers. And what I saw today, it was great to see the chief and some of these police departments engage in the movement and saying, that's not us. That's not us. That's why I say a little leaven. That aggressive officer who the gun made, but he didn't make the gun. The gun is just a tool.
Just a tool.
There's other tools in your box. They teach you that. They teach you that. There are other tools in your box. But if your default is the gun first, how do you de-escalate from the gun? It's already out. It's already engaged. You
can't pull that bullet back.
You can't pull it back. So one of the things that we have to get to is that law enforcement has to change, but the Fraternal Order of Police, the Metropolitan Police Association, all these law enforcement unions have to be willing to agree on what makes a good officer. And we have to be willing as police officers to give up our bad elements. We have to be willing to let go of our bad elements. That would give us credibility, as we used to say in the streets. That gives you creds in the streets. Because if the law enforcement is willing to give up its bad apples to save the profession, because at the end of the day, we want our kids to be police officers, firemen. Right. We want that profession to thrive because you need law enforcement now. You need law enforcement.
That's right.
But law enforcement cannot be one-sided.
That's right.
If it's one-sided, then it's detrimental to the group that's being suppressed by it. It cannot be an overseer model in the hood, in a community policing model in affluent neighborhoods.
That's so good.
It can't be.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's real good stuff.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
What do you see on the side of a police car? What does it say?
To serve.
Protect and serve. That's all they have to do.
Yeah.
All of that aggressiveness is really not necessary. I mean, if you commit a crime, arrest me. That's what your job is. But you ain't supposed to decide how I have to treat you. You know, I got to treat you a certain way because you're an African American versus whether you're another color or not, man. It just doesn't make any sense to do that.
It doesn't at all. And which leads to Officer Harris, Ron, I really want to hear from you and get your perspective on this because I think it's what Felix lifted up are some real good points. And as you, as a current officer, as we've already said before, we don't want to paint a broad brush and just say all officers are bad or crooked. I know your heart. You're my boxing coach. Teach me how to do some of that boxing. So I've been hitting the bag and I've been doing, you go through all the techniques and stuff like that. But maybe you can help us to understand because as OG Deke said, it seems to be some extreme aggressiveness coming from the police officers, especially when it comes to black men. What do you think from the police officer perspective that policemen or police women can do to better what we're seeing play out in front of our faces?
Well, it's many things we can do, and everything I talk about today is the same thing I talk to my officers about. And first things first, you have to know your environment. Before I police any environment, I need to know who I'm policing. You have to study the people that you're going to be dealing with. If I was to go to China, I couldn't just prop into China and start policing. I would have to understand the culture, learn the language, and understand how they move and groove. So that's first order of business. Secondly, I always tell our guys, like I said, is learning to adapt to a situation and relax is very important. Like if I'm going to a hot call, like what the deacon said, and why they are so aggressive, there's so many calls you go on that you are uncertain of what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And I've been to a zillion calls. And some are calm situations, and others are extremely high. And it takes training. I preach training, practice, understanding, all these things in unison to be effective. Now, you have a split second sometimes to make some certain decisions. Of course, some of those could be life or death. But like I do, after I'm in a situation or after I engage in a situation, I de-escalate or I either review the situation in my mind, how I could play it better. So I talk about the approach. First order of business, how do I approach the situation? I get a call on the radio, and the nature of that call usually dictates how I'm going to approach the situation usually. Say I get a situation, well, in policing, the majority calls we're going to get is a domestic violence situation. We're going to go to about at least, say in a day, at least 80% of our calls probably be domestics.
Really?
At least 80%.
Wow.
So that's dealing with male, female relationships, brother, sister, family situations. So when I go to those situations, and the second will be traffic stops, which we'll talk about later. But when I go to those situations, my job as the police officer is to do what? He mentioned earlier, keep the peace. But however, it's already up in the air. Everyone's going off the wall. So if I go in there off the wall, the situation is going to go overboard. So my job as the professional, I tell people, because we humans, we got to study humans for a living. This is what we do. My job is to bring that down. And I always talk about voice level. Be the calm in the middle of a storm. So as they're going high, I'm here. It's hard to argue with somebody who's not what? Arguing back.
Right.
Now, once I bring you down to this space here, now we can talk. And we have to be able to do that on a regular basis. And one thing I like about our body cams is when I go to a domestic, and I practice on these skills all the time. I practice on dialogue. I practice on being fair. Because just like the male has a perspective, the female has a perspective. You got to hear both sides to be just. It's fairness. You said it earlier. Justice is what? Fairness. So if you do something on the call and you're in a situation you don't feel like you're doing something fair, you're not being what? Just. It's real simple. So I go to this call, I go to the situation, I may talk to the male party, then I'm going to talk to the female party. Now, my job is to try to get people to what? Police their own household. I don't want to go to everybody's house and police their house because I'm not going to live with them. So my job is to get people to navigate in their own household and police themselves. Yeah. That's what officers should be trying to do. So we wouldn't have to even be at that household. Huh? We won't even be dealing with this situation because it's being policed by the male and the female in that house. That's how I deal with it. And it's that same concept I do when I'm even navigating with my son. You know, I'm policing him, so he's understanding how when he gets older, he knows how to do what? Police his own household. So it's those type of strategies that I try to do to de-escalate. And like Brother Felix said, there's going to be some bad apples in these bunches. It's going to be. In a system of racism, which we know we have in a system of racism, if I'm winning in this system, I'll say this again, if I'm winning in this system, why do I want to stop it? Why would I want to stop a system? If I'm winning, why would I stop? So you have to look at racism in policing is a fraction of it. Racism is a system. It has to be broken down. And it can't be an emotional thing to break it down. It's got to be strategic planning to break down racism. This is why I say you got to be the calm in the middle of a storm. You won't be able to solve any problems if it's not constructive, if it's not strategic, if it's not planned out. And this is how we have to operate in our community if we want to see change. Or you always get what you always got, which is the same thing we've been getting for how many years. This is why. So if that answers your question.
That was great. Yeah, that was real great because I think those strategies are very helpful. And, you know, as you said, training, I believe, is so important for our law enforcement. So they are fully trained in being able to handle situations that they may go into that may already be intense, that may already be very hard to deal with. I want to piggyback and ask another question, if you will, Ron. What would you say to black men who may be watching us now, watching this conversation now, and to all of us sitting here, when we are approached by a white officers, is there anything that you would say are do's or don'ts, or what advice would you give on how to handle situations like that?
That's one of my favorite topics to touch because when I speak at the high schools or speak with my young boys, I run a cadet program at my job. So I'm dealing with young people who want to be the police and navigate in the field of law enforcement or any related field. And first thing I try to teach our guys, and it's real for us, because you know what I'm saying, black males, sometimes they say we're aggressive. The approach is aggressive. Right. First we got to talk about where the fear of that aggression came. You understand that when there's in our community, in our society, you can see it in the media, when you've been betrayed, because you understand before I destroy you or want to brutalize you, I have to what? Betray you as an animal, betray you as a savage, et cetera, et cetera. So then that becomes the justification for excessive force or inappropriately policing. So you got to always think about it like that. So this is why I always tap into media and how we are presented in society. It's so important. Stereotypes. Because what happens is we help plant these stereotypes and don't even realize it with the way we eat up what's in the media. So we have to, when we see something happen in the media that's showing us in a negative light, it needs to be addressed immediately. Because what happens is it trickles down to your young boys. And then the same thing you watching on social media, that white cop watching, that white person watching in Naperville, these people who may not understand who we are, they're watching that. And that's where they're getting their definition of who black people are. Mm-hmm. Black people are rappers, thugs, robbers, rapists. So right away, when I approach one, once it gets planted in the subconscious, it's too hard to remove. This is why it's so important to tap into your reality immediately. Because once you tap into it, gets into the subconscious and in your downloaded system like a computer, it's hard to remove it. It's hard to remove it. It's almost like you got to get a whole new computer, it seems like. So you got to clean that old disk out and remove those type of things. But then you mentioned what I tell my young guys, and it's real simple. We are here to navigate and survive. Yeah. Survive the encounter. This is chess. This is not checkers. Every move you make has to be strategic. I'm being serious. Every move you make has to be strategic. So when I tell guys, after my traffic stop, and I teach them, and some guys do it well, some of y'all young guys, And then other guys, I tell them, I say, you did this wrong. But I've been doing this a while, so I'm able to show them what they did wrong. You got an officer approaching your vehicle, you know, you want to be calm. When I get stopped by the police, they don't know the police yet. But you know what I have before I even get to my car? Driver's license. You need a driver's license to drive. And they're going to ask for what? Proof of insurance. You know these 2 documents you need to have right off the bat. Have them out. I have them out before they even get there. Because by the time they got to get out of the car, they got to put their seatbelt. My driver's license and my insurance is already here. Other hands up on the steering wheel at the ready. That's me as a police officer. I'm doing that. For what? To make sure I go home. Now, after he talks and finds out who I am, of course, he looks, oh, okay, officer, or he may say, what'd you do, etc. I mean, for my 18 years of policing, most police officers, if you got those 2 documents and you good, what is most thing you going to do? He's usually going to give you a warning. And I'm going from my experience and what I've seen. Now, if you know your driver's license is suspended, you know it's suspended, or you have, you know, some guy in your car that is smoking weed or whatever, and they smell it, you're giving them a reason to go further with the situation. I tell everybody, you are responsible for whatever vehicle you have. Whatever vehicle you drive, you're responsible. It could be your cousin's vehicle. If you get behind that wheel and get stopped by the police, you are now responsible for that vehicle. So that's why I tell people, I don't drive nobody else's vehicle but my own, because I know what's in my vehicle. See, we have to understand these simple strategies. And the thing is, hands up, you don't got to be, I tell people, on the side of the road in your car is not the time to try to be a lawyer, because you don't know who you're dealing with. You might have a race soldier or a racist cop. I don't even know. And he doesn't have a badge saying I'm a racist. So how do you know? So you have to navigate wisely. That means, because the name of the game is to survive the encounter. That's the ultimate prize. Right. My Sidoshi tells me in Marshall, we always say, always survive. That's the, no matter what, survive at all costs. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I like that point. I have 3 sons, and they could tell you my speech. And you all know my boys.
What is that speech you tell them?
I tell them, listen, the bottom line is exactly what Ron said. You know you're going to be pulled over. You have your driver's license ready. You have your insurance card ready. You can't reach in the glove box, because you don't know who that guy is that's walking up to the car.
Don't even give him a reason.
You don't give him a reason. I mean, concealed carry sometimes is great. I tell people, even, I'm going to tell some friends of mine I just talked to today, concealed carry is concealed carry, but it's a different kind of concealed carry when you're an African-American male.
Absolutely.
And that's including police officers. Other police officers have shot police officers, because that's something we'll talk about later, yes, about benefit of the doubt. Giving us the benefit of the doubt. But one thing that Ron is saying, I want my boys to come back and tell me their narrative. If they can't come back and tell me the narrative, Brother Floyd can't tell his narrative. We have to piece it together. If it wasn't for the camera, the police narrative would lead.
Totally different. Yeah.
The police narrative would lead. Now you got to tear down and defeat that narrative, because he can't speak. Excellent point Ron made. You are not a lawyer on the side of the road. Why would you debate a police officer on the side of the road? Why would you, if he says, can I search your car? You say no. If he says, I'm searching anyway, he just violated your rights. Let him do it.
That's like,
well, I could get hurt either way. The odds are, which you're right, you could get hurt. Floyd was killed. You could get hurt. But 9 times out of 10, the people that comply can come back later, sue, and get a big check.
Real simple. Real simple.
Because you are alive to tell your story.
Absolutely.
So my sons, everything that Ron said, ditto. But one thing they have to do, and if they can slip this in when the police is really getting bad with them, and this is one of them guys that he said they didn't wear their sheet that day, and it's a guy that shouldn't be there, he's one of the bad apples, straightforward say, listen, I wouldn't do that, sir, but sir, I don't want to fight with you. My dad, he's a cop, he retired. When they hear that, if that don't trigger them to slow down, then you just keep calm. I will deal with them myself. I have enough friends in law enforcement, in the law enforcement community, commanders, colonels, retired. We can deal with them, and we can get them, but I need you to come home and tell me, like Ron said. You got to give me your story. Don't let somebody else tell your story. Absolutely. I know you bad. I know you Billy bad. You talking about, I'm a man. You don't have to give up your manhood to comply.
That's right.
And when they say, get on the ground, you're going to lay on the ground, you say, you know what's wet? They're disrespecting you. I get that. I'd rather see you wet and disrespected than dead. because I'm going to deal with them later. Tell your story.
That's so true. And it's sad that we have to put those exceptions in there because, you know, I've seen videos where I've seen white people get pulled over. I've seen them slam the door in the cop's face, you know, almost slap the cop, tuss him out, and the cop is just so calm. And you know, we all seen those videos and we said, couldn't be us. You know, I couldn't get away with that. Ain't that something? But we do, as you all said so eloquently, we have to teach our young black men and men in general those strategies that you just told us. Have your license, insurance already out. Have your hand where it can be seen. As you said, somebody, if it gets high, just calm down. Don't try to argue. Don't try to debate. Just try to live to see another day. And I think to have to hear that to some black people can be disheartening. They may feel like, well, why do I got to do that? I'm tired of that. But it's the speech that we have to say if we want them to live to see another day. And I'm telling you, it's getting so bad. Ryan, let me ask you this. Do you think as a young black male that you've reached a place that you're scared to live in America?
Man, I was just having this conversation this morning. We were talking earlier. Yeah, I'm terrified. And that's my reality. And I think that we're here at church, at Faith Movers. It's important for us to have faith, but it's also important for us to be honest. The Bible says Abraham looked at his body as good as dead, yet believed. Right? Yet believed. And I think that we have to look at our situation for what it is. It's an illness, it's a sickness. But continue to believe, continue to have faith. But I want to speak on behalf of our young people. I have a question for you, Ron. You were talking about just interactions with the police, but I'm thinking about that young person who's angry, who has anger and doesn't know it. You know, you know that they use a bravado, but it's true hurt. What would you say to that person? Because that person is interacting with police that you know, good or bad police. What is it that you would say to that person to help give them some level of peace? Because I live in Chicago, and I see a lot of our young people who are over-policed. They don't get that community model. They're used to being stop and frisk. I still see stop and frisk. We keep saying it's gone, but I still see it. I still see it. And they have that anger. What would you say to that person?
Well, excellent question. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to talk about an incident we had today, like before I came here. And it was an emotional incident. A lady passed, and the son was angry. So he was getting ready to take the anger out on his family members because he's blaming them for the situation. And see, me, I'm a different type of officer because I understand our people. So I understand he was up, he was angry, he was upset, and he was ready to go. He was ready to go to that point. So me as the scientist in this situation, I'm not going to sit there and be quiet. No, I let him vent. Sometimes it's okay to let people vent. Now, I go back to him and I'm that calm, just exactly like I did. I touched his stomach. I said, brother, I understand. I've been there. I understand. I just lost my mom. I understand. And I saw his body. And he just bawled. He brought it down. And I kept him there. I understand. We're going to let us handle it. Let us handle it. I'm being the voice in the what? Calm voice in the middle of this storm. Amen. You see? So if I would have said, man, you can't vent. Yeah. Now what happens? The whole thing is going up. I'm not helping anything. I'm adding gasoline to the fire. Again, I teach people you have to be effective in these streets, even if I wasn't a cop. When you master yourself, is what I always say when I teach my clients, when you master yourself, everything else is easy. When you master yourself, everything else is easy. So what I mean is that when you know yourself, you're in control, you're confident, you've trained, you're ready, you already know you're in a world that is a racist society. You prepared. So you're studying this situation in your right state of mind at all times. So when you're in that situation under fire, you're able to respond. And your skills won't betray you if you do the right thing. So like I told him, I brought him right there. And he brought down, and that was over. He's off, and he came to me and cried. And they, see, people can read your spirit as an officer. That's why I tell our guys, I say, you don't have to plant none on no guy. They're going to we've had guys, I said, you can't lie. Who you are is going to come out sooner or later. So I say, if you are a ill-spirited officer, it's going to come out. You're an ill-spirited person, it's coming out. So we ain't got to plant nothing on you and look, it's coming out. Whether you get numerous complaints, that's coming out.
Yes.
See what I'm saying? So it brought him down. So to answer your question, our young people are going to be, it's okay to let them vent. However, I'm big on venting. Now, once you get your vent out, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Now, that's strategic plan. Let's strategize now. Because we can't change an incident that happened because we can't take it back. So the only thing we can do is change what? The future. That's the only thing we can control is the future. Because once the incident has taken place, we can't take that incident back. If it be different, we can say, I got this ball, I'm going to take time back. We can't. So once the situation it happens, and like Brother George, who passed away, I was sickening watching that video. I was sick. I couldn't rest. So I got in the lab and started doing some other things I need to do because I can't rest. Spirit's uneasy. But sometimes God will have to make an incident like that. They say, a little pebble thrown into the water and make this giant wave. Yeah. That sort of situation is what we're in right now. Yeah. So I understand, young man, I understand. Now, bring it back. Because like Brother George said, when we start destroying our own communities, because we're angry, our own communities, our own grocery stores, how are we going to eat? Famine is on the way. So we got to start thinking. You're destroying grocery stores. They're going to close all these things down. They don't want to bring things to the black community anyway, and we destroyed our own businesses. We should never let it get to the point where we have lost control of our actions and it leads to destruction. Yes. Because there's always be more incidents. If we react every time, see, the enemy understands that. That's why the social media thing is going crazy. Because they understand we react and we explode. We need a logical approach for this situation. We're dealing with master scientists out here, man. It's very important.
That's good. That's good.
And I would like for us, as we look at this, I love your analogy. It's a ripple. But it's a ripple in a pond that will also cause some reflection. We need to reflect because the passion and the level of passion that we have right now, because if you take the incidents and you read the FBI Uniform Crime Report, what you will find is that out of 1,000 shootings and killings, out of 1,000, the police may have killed 50. Wow. We can't lose our mind over the 50 while we still, as a people, killing the 950. We need just as much passion about us killing each other than we do about the police. I would like to see this same passion when folks, y'all know who I'm talking about out there, you hear me, and people killing each other. Absolutely. When they killing each other, we got to come together and stop, because one thing for sure, which Ron says, as young men, and I tell my sons, you cannot argue, fight, and battle. I tell young guys at the college when they get all turned up, as they say, you're not going to win this battle. But I can help you survive it if you just calm down.
That's so good.
If you just calm down. We can get you through this, but I can't get you through anything if you go beyond. I like your approach. I'm going to do that. I like that approach. When you touch them, I notice some of these young guys are babies. They're babies. They just need a touch. The fact that you can tell them or sympathize. One guy, he was talking so crazy. I said, dude, you sound so bad. Man, I grew up in the projects that you talking about. Matter of fact, they tore them down, right? Oh, yeah. I said, all the things you did, we done already. Remember, people you're talking to, they probably walked in your shoes already. Yeah. I said, some of the OGs done some things. So you need to understand that. We've been there. We can break you off a little knowledge if you want to survive, but you can't be turned up because nobody's going to listen to you when you're this loud.
The Bible says, be angry, but sin not.
I like that.
And that's a great balance. Be angry, be passionate, have fire, have a righteous indignation. That's fine. But don't allow that to push you to doing something that's out of order. Don't allow that to push you to doing something that you may regret later. And as you're saying, as we are protest, and we should protest. We should peacefully protest. We should use our voice and our platform for differences. I think it's so important that we keep on telling that message. Let's not tear down our own communities. in our own businesses that we're going to need tomorrow. So we cannot allow the enemy to trick us to hurting ourselves. We have to be wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. Now, has this been good tonight? Were you blessed by this? I pray that this has been a blessing to you. I'm just so grateful for all of you guys for participating. I want to do something because we're getting ready to log off, but as they do in the on CNN, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds, if you will. 30 seconds. If you could kind of leave us with a message or a word of hope, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds, if you will. If you could leave us with some type of inspiration, because you know it's hard times. People are hurting. I'm upset. I'm a man of God. I'm a man of faith, but I've been having some bad days lately. And so we all need hope. What you said, this is faith movers. What perhaps you can say to those watching that can give us some words of encouragement during these tough times? D.
I would say that, we have to keep our faith and not let fear overtake us. And in the process, use wisdom when you make your moves. And always trust that God is on your side.
I love that. I love that, Ryan.
Be encouraged by the efforts. It's been a lot of efforts, a lot of stuff going on. I see collectively a lot of companies, it's a different climate. They feel like they have to respond, and some people are responding in such a way where now they're starting to say what it is. It's police brutality. Some of these things, when you reread some of the press releases, they know what's going on. And I feel like that encouraged me. But also the thing that encouraged me the most was just seeing people actually clean up the city of Chicago. I've been seeing a lot of that, a lot of stuff on Facebook. And I feel like a lot of times we feel like we want to start our own thing. Don't be afraid to partner. This is the time that we ought to be partnering with other people. Because I know someone right now who he's got a lot of things, like he has a wood hammer, he got a lot of resources like that to help build things. Hey, I'm just going to help him with that. I'm not a builder. That's not something I'll do. But if he needs resources, let me give him some money for that. I know it's a young lady I know. I'm into, health services. So I'm lending my help with counseling services with some parents and some children. But whatever it is, your thing is, the gift that you have, partner. Use your gift to partner. You don't have to start something new. It's a million things out there. And it's out there. It's all on Facebook, all on social media.
That's good. Oh, that's good. That's good. Officer Ron.
Stay focused. We're here to be tried, and we have to recognize that when we're being tried, let's respond the right way. Train. Now, I'm big on training, eating right, meditate every day. We're in a time where we need to be in focus mode. Everything we do should be constructive. This is going to be effective because this is a constructive event. We shouldn't have anything that's destructive in our life. If it's destructive, we shouldn't even be involved in it. To build our community, we got to take it with a constructive approach. Like Brother Ryan said, work together. Because if we want to build our community, we have to work together. Very, very important. So I'll leave everybody with that. 3 books. The United Independent Compensatory Code Concept by Neely Fuller that deals with racism in its true essence. ISIS Papers of Dr. Francis Welsing. And The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Read those books, you good.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Oh, again.
One more time.
The United Independent Code System Concept by Neely Fuller. He's one of the best people I've ever heard dealing with race relations. Excellent speak on it. ISIS Papers by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And The Art of War, one of my favorites, by Sun Tzu. And I think that we should be studying and reading on a regular basis, being able to deal with this situation in a systematic and strategic approach. Thank you.
I love that. I love that.
For me, real short, don't flame the fires right outside your door. Don't do it. But you also could be the change that is needed for yourself and your community. I am real big on African-American people understanding what community means. We should be able to have a community, and when police come, have reasonable expectation that it'll be positive, engaging, and supportive dialogue.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Were you blessed by this tonight? I know you were blessed. I want to thank you all once again for coming on and having this dialogue and taking the time out to be with us tonight. You really helped a whole lot of people, and I really appreciate you all. Man, I want you to know I love all of you all. I think in times like these, we got to tell each other that we love each other, how much we appreciate each other. Life is not promised. Your future's never promised or granted. You can't take nothing for granted. So I love you all. Thank you all so much. I hope you were blessed. Faith movers, as we get ready to log off, remember, I want to encourage you, you can still give tonight. You know, every Wednesday we give. We have 6 ways that you can give. And so if we can put that up. You got 6 ways you can give. And, of course, you can do that tonight, and we'll be very grateful. Remember, on Sunday, we're back with worshiping online at 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. I got a special treat for you this Sunday, and you got to watch to see what it is. But I'm telling you, it's really going to bless your life. Hey, FMC, we turn 9 years old in a couple weeks. Come on, turn up at home. 9 years old. God has been good to us. And we are so grateful for all of our members, all of our friends, all of our partners. We thank you so much. We're going to have a great time at Faith Week. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. And I'm excited about what God has for us in our future. Remember, on tomorrow, we'll be on the prayer call at 7 a.m. So get up, let's pray, let's keep the faith, and let's keep going full speed ahead. Thank you all once again. I love you all. We miss you. You know we miss you. I can't wait to get y'all back up in here in this sanctuary. We're going to have some good church when that time comes. Until then, stay strong. Keep the faith. I'll see you in the morning. Well, I'll be with you in the morning. I love you. Have a good night. And remember to always be a faith mover. Fight the power.